it's a unique time in history. There's a train that passes by. Either you jump on it or you can left behind.
A lot of people talk about AI in theory. Benjamin is using it inside a real company to rethink the product from the ground up.
We've rebuilt the planning side of our system in about like 4 weeks. The rider prototype was really interesting as well. We've done that in 3 weeks.
And that's what makes this conversation so interesting. This is a principal PM using AI not just to move faster, but to push real product and platform change.
We're going to move from being doers to being managers. I think there's going to be probably new roles in companies called context managers.
That idea really stuck with me because this episode isn't about prompting hacks. It's about managing context, making better decisions, and building fast without losing control.
I think with AI, you pay your tech debt twice. Either it's going to get way worse or it's going to completely unleash your productivity.
Benjamin also gets into the trade-offs, how to prototype quickly, test with real users, and use AI as a thought partner without letting it create chaos.
With my colleague and designer, Adrian, we were iterating on the prototype in the evening, ready to test the new version the next morning.
This episode is about what happens when a PM stops treating AI like a side tool and start using it to drive real transformation. This is my conversation with Benjamin Ledoux, AI Principal PM at Zeelo. Benjamin, thank you so much for being here. I'm super amazed by everything you've done, and we've had a chat. I'm hyped to talk about AI. I'm hyped to talk about a company that actually embraced AI and everything you've done to actually boost everything that you do and open new opportunities with AI. So
it's a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome. So you've been both a founder. You started by building this dating app, and then you went to a bigger company. Going to that company, what did founder mode teach you the most? About product and that bigger organizations don't necessarily get.
I think like founding your own company just teach you to go and get it. To not just wait for the opportunity, just like if you want to make something happen, just go for it. It's just like this drive to to sell your ideas and to make them happen, I guess. What
brought you to sort of dig into AI?
I think at first, going out of this dating app adventure, I felt I needed something to work on something that had a kind of purpose. I wanted to put my skills to something that did good in the world. And Zeelo is, I think, one of the few companies where you actually solving environmental problems, social problems. So it's just like, helps you get up in the morning, I guess. So for people who don't know Zeelo, like bring us up to speed, like so you help with transportation and making plans for basically rerouting people and making sure that traffic transit is fluid, and from what I gather, that more people use the same means of transportation. Yeah, so we basically work with companies and schools to set up bus transportation, so private bus routes to take students and staff into work. We solve a big problem because we mainly act in suburban areas where, when you work for a logistic company and you finish your shift at 2 a.m. in the morning, there's no public transport. Yeah. So you need a way to get back home. And we actually give access to jobs to people who can't afford like a second car in their household and these kind of things. So it's kind of like a really specific layer of transportation that's like completely underserved. So yeah.
Gotcha. In your LinkedIn, I remember that you say that you prototype in weeks and not quarters. So what's your personal definition of a good prototype? What's a trap prototype?
Well, I'd say a prototype is made to learn, right? And you build a great product to earn. For me, a good prototype is something that lets you learn something. start with. But if we go more into the technical aspect of it, I think the trap is to like build a prototype that's completely vibe coded and won't let you iterate. We kind of saw that at Zeelo recently, where we prototyped the whole rider app. We spent a lot of time like figuring out the data model. What we hadn't spent enough time on is like all the navigation patterns. So for example, we were working on an onboarding flow, which is like a series of like different screens, without telling AI how to build this. So it just like created a sequence of these different screens, passing the data to one to the other. And then came a time where we wanted to reshuffle the order of the screens. And what happened is everything broke. Okay. Because we didn't have like this kind of pattern where you store all this like data the user is entering into like a kind of a container. So we had to redo everything, which was super interesting, I think. I think that's really the trap, is to it's really easy with, this like AI vibe coding tools to get you a first version. But as soon as you need to like pivot or iterate, you often find yourself in a really tricky situation and you lose a lot of time. Yeah. Also, these AI coding tools are if your code starts to get messy, then the output starts to degrade a lot, because it doesn't know which pattern to apply. It finds different ways of doing things and doesn't know what's the truth. So do you think, because again, like in the world of AI we live in right now, things are going super fast. So I get lost in the loop of finding, which one is better. Do you want to use anti-gravity? Do you want to use Claude Code? And you just, because you test things out, and then some get better results one day, and then the next you're like, no, I like this one better. On one side, I would say, do you think that things are evolving, and do you feel that the code is getting cleaner? And on the other side, a second question would be, if it doesn't get clean, like when do you have to like quit? When do you have to like switch and get back to like the first prompt? Is there a time where you say, okay, I'm in this now, and it's way too, advanced for me to like start building again? I think the trap is to like let AI do too much without having a look at what it does, because your code base can really like drift. I think what I'm seeing is that as humans, we're going to move to be doers, to be managers. So AI is doing the job for you, but you need to manage your code base. You need to manage what you invest time in. And, tech debt is still a thing. You still need to make sure that, whenever you start to feel like you have too much tech debt into a certain area, to like fix it, because also your tech debt, I think with AI, you pay your tech debt twice. First is code that can break, but now it's code that influences AI in the wrong direction. So the more you can like keep your code clean, the more the output of the AI is going to stay to the maximum, let's say. And I've seen that in action. It's actually like, it accelerates. Like basically is like either it's going to get way worse, or it's going to completely unleash your productivity. So it's go one way or the other, but really fast. Do you have so the one you use, I think you have a preference for Claude Code, right? Yeah. So maybe to get back to Zeelo, and then we'll transition to like all the technical details. So Zeelo is pretty much operations heavy, constraint heavy. Why is it a perfect playground, for AI? Well, when your operations, that means customer care, customer success, and dealing with like things that happen on the ground. I think it's a perfect playground for like all these like AI agents that like do a lot of like the groundwork for you, and like that means we can all focus on what has the biggest value. I also think AI in terms of like development is really interesting, because we are B2B2C business, so that means we have to maintain a lot of different products. That means like the patterns you use and like how much of the workload you put on the back end, how much of the workload you put on the front end is interesting. And so the system is really complex, and then you have to like really future-proof it.
Yeah.
You can build things in a way that you find yourself 3 months later not being able to build a certain feature because you just didn't think about it 3 months ago, and you just go through a massive migration.
Yeah.
So AI lets you like be a sparring partner, basically, to think well ahead and throw at it like real life problems, and that's gonna let you build things with like the future in mind.
So when we started talking, you told me how you basically used AI to be more autonomous and help for the whole replatforming of at Zeelo. And so how do you turn, like what was the trigger that made that replatforming unavoidable, let's say?
I think it's probably all. I think that when you choose a platform, I think all the signals are coming at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like lots of bugs, cost to change really high, because you need to build a feature that looks simple in the eyes of like stakeholders, but then just because you have the wrong data model, the wrong setup, it takes you like twice the amount of time you need to build it. And also like performance issues, which are also tied to data models that are not serving the business anymore. So I say all the signals that you can think of, usually they come at the same time.
But that's pretty much it. When you get these types of signals, like how do you turn to AI, given that the sense that I got since we've been talking is that still like it is a sparring partner, as you said. It is something that can help you, but there are risks. There are risks that it's not as clean. So like when you get signals about performance, about cleanliness and all these things, like what made you say, okay, you know what? Like let's just try it with our own means to trigger this.
So you mean about how the process of how we went about it?
Yeah.
Well, I think that the system became like really, really big. It was all like in the same, like in the monolith. And a lot of the problems came from like really tightly coupled features of things that shouldn't have an impact on each other. So the first phase was really about like, okay, how we can break down this big system into separate microsystems that are interconnected and talk to each other. It's like this complex of microservices, right? So once we had that vision, the goal was then to build this separate system that we call domain. Comes from domain-driven design. And that's where I started to use AI to basically shape those domains to make sure they had clear boundaries, because that's the main thing. And then throwing it at like all the problems I've seen in the last few years. Real world examples that even AI couldn't figure out at first. Like I've seen examples where I started to build like a specific domain, and then it started to say, oh yeah, I understand you need to do this and this and that. And then it started to shape the data model. I was like, no. Imagine this case. It was like, oh yeah, this is a real life world problem that I can think of. And you slowly like kind of iterate and get to like the perfect solution. But another interesting thing I think is with this kind of exercise, you need to think well ahead. So you need to think about, okay, I'm not going to build all the features now. But I need to make sure that when I'm going to want to build those features in 6 months, 12 months, it's not going to generate like big migration. So you need to build the minimum viable product for each domain to make sure that you quickly have a fully functional system. So the scope system is maintained, and then basically you go back to each domain and then you build up the capabilities, but later. So to de-risk, basically you need to focus on like the core entities of your industry. What's a route? What's a timetable? What's a vehicle? what's a program, and then just leave the rest for later.
What's the setup that you used? Like, I know you told me you use Claude Code to write PRDs, and that you actually managed to get a really good amount of detail.
Yeah. So I've started with Cloud Desktop actually. So creating artifacts, and really quickly I found myself like copy pasting and having different versions of my documents and having to delete them. And, so that's about when we saw this post on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, product managers, you need to use Cloud Code. It's crazy." So I jumped on the boat, and then I basically created a new repo where I created a folder with templates of documents I need to produce for each domain, and then a really simple document that explains what is Zeelo, what are the different domains. Basically, Cloud Code lets you finally manage your context, and then I've created like a command called like /define domain, and then basically Cloud Code just interviews me and says, okay, what does the domain do? What are the entities? Like, what do you problems you need to solve, etc. And then you start to like throw it at problems, like I said, and you refine it to the point you're happy with it. And what's interesting is because once you've done one domain and you move to the next one, AI lets you check that you're not breaking what you said in the first domain, so that they're all going to work together and there's no inconsistencies. That's the part I found like the most interesting, because it's kind of the concept of compounding software, right? You start investing in 1 and 2, and then as you go, basically all the work you've done previously, you don't have to repeat yourself, and just like compounds.
Yeah. There's two interesting things that you mentioned. The first one is conversation. I feel that most PMs that I've trained when it comes to AI, they're sort of trying to build a perfect prompt, and they're thinking that the input, is the most important, while sometimes I think that being able to ask the AI to, as you said, like ask me questions, and this builds things up, like of course the task itself has to be crystal clear, but the fact of asking the AI also to ask you a certain amount of things, I think that helps out a lot. Like, do you do that often, or and how'd you set it up?
I think there's a big kind of change that happened with Claude Code, because I don't know if you remember the beginning of like ChatGPT. We used to like say, we used to use like prompt engineers to like build like super long text, with like make sure we give AI the whole context.
Well, for the context window,
I think now we've just basically understood that we can set that context one time and forever. You should not have to repeat yourself all the time. So actually, if you do things right, when you give AI a task in this kind of setup, your prompt can be like 2-3 lines, because all the rest is already configured, and it's going to stay there, and it's going to be true for every task you give it to. So I started to like work on this project, and I like to call it like the product oracle, because I see it more than a system to rebuild the system. I see it like as a system for the product team, because you can go as far as thinking, okay, I'm going to add a folder for my personas. I'm going to add a folder for my company vision, company mission. I'm going to have the folder for jobs to be done, brand, tone of voice. Who are my teams? Who are my internal teams? Who are my external stakeholders? And all of this, you never had to repeat it. And the other interesting thing is that what we're seeing with Claude Code is that the systems engineers are using are starting to spread into product teams, but I think they're going to spread into other departments as well. And to my point earlier, where we're going to move from being doers to being managers, I think there's going to be probably new roles in companies called context managers. Because now we have the possibility to fix the context of the company for everyone to use and to leverage. So I've talked about the system for product teams which you can use as a sparring partner for strategy. You can generate PRDs to make sure they align with your strategy. Even, you have the amplitude MCP now. You say, hey, give me like what's our retention on 30 days, these kind of things. I can see all the teams starting to use the same systems. And these teams probably going to need the same context that you need. So you think about personas, the product team needs it. The customer success team needs it. And I think there's going to be a real leverage for companies to manage that context really finely. So, the leadership team can manage, okay, what's our quarterly strategy? What's our roadmap? And so to make sure every team is rowing in the same direction, because all the AI systems are leveraged the same context. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing that's going to come.
I feel like repository is basically where what PMs should turn to, not just use your not just go to ChatGPT and have a simple project, but this is what separates people who use AI to AI driven PMs. And what's really interesting is you talked about context. All the C levels that I've talked to, they all say the same thing. My job is to give context, and that's it. That's what we're switching to. And of course they're managers, and that's exactly what you said, because people need to understand the ecosystem, where the company is going, and so like in what playground they're located basically, and at that point, that's where you get autonomous people who can actually focus on certain specific problems. But that all comes, that's all real because of context. That's what makes sense. So building your context and, most of your work being making sure that you have all the data and everything, like that's honestly what's super interesting. Now, the caveat to that is that it's hard for like bigger companies, for example, to allow such things to happen just because of data. Because if you do that, then the models might be trained on your data. And of course, like, your Amazon's competitor and Amazon, like all PMs are actually inputting all the specific data when it comes to Amazon. Then you can actually get some pretty specific, I'm guessing, info when it gets to that. So, I don't know where the limit is, and I don't know what you can do in terms of local setup where you can sort of like, have some proprietary data. I don't know if you have an opinion when it comes to that.
Well, I think that was like the big fear, when all these tools started to pop up, and I think that's been the big focus for the enterprise version of ChatGPT, Claude, etc. I think they really like made sure that how you use AI within the company is kind of in a sandbox, training the main model. But I see what you mean in a way that you need to finally manage the information that you put in this context, because the context you give to a certain team who's working on like a staff project, for example, you don't want to leak into like all the teams. So that's going to be a really interesting problem to solve for big companies. But I think this is also something you can leverage, because if you can finally manage the context you give to certain teams, then you can manage the box in which they're working on, and just give the right information you want them to have and not the rest, so that they're not completely influenced by things that are coming, well in the future, like in 5-7 years, but also because they're probably not needed, like the context. If you think of if the leadership team had like such system, they'll probably have context that you don't want all the other teams to have.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So it can be a problem, but I can see it like also like a big lever for productivity.
Yeah. Getting back to what you build, so you've used Claude Code to generate your PRDs and everything and give the context. Afterwards, what did you build? How did you build it? And how did you test it with users?
So yeah, most of the time we spent at the beginning was to figure out the data model. It might be counterintuitive maybe for people, but I truly think that that's the foundation of a really good system, because if you can't agree with your colleagues and your stakeholders of how you model your own world, then you have a problem to start with.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. Then I think to get buy-in really quickly, I think what we did was simply to build a prototype and show how fast we can go, and also show the how much value you can get, how things can change by simply changing how you model the world.
Yeah.
So we've rebuilt the planning side of our system in about like 4 weeks, and all looks the same. Honestly, it's like just a copycat if you look at the UI.
Yeah.
But then when you start using it, you realize how much things change. So that was really cool. We've been able to give that prototype to the rest of the company. They've been able to test it live, and we found out like a lot of things. We've been able to future proof our data model. The rider prototype was really interesting as well.
Yeah.
We've done that in 3 weeks.
Lovable, right?
Yeah, lovable as well, but connected to the same backend.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because you could plan your routes and then also go through the onboarding flow with the same data. So like real programs we already manage. And that happened just before we went on a road trip on the east coast of the US, visiting some of our customers.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing because we just were there, sat in the bus with them, and then just got them to try the new app live. And then we also, so we've learned a lot on the first day actually. And then on the first night at the hotel with my colleague and designer Adrian, we were iterating on the prototype in the evening, ready to test the new version the next morning. And that was like a push myself moment kind of thing. And in this like whole AI thing, I was like, okay, things have really changed.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we've been able to do that like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Not only can you build faster, but building faster allows you to get some feedback super quickly and then make the tweaks, like the next day you could actually show the evolution, right?
Yeah. I think it's also like you realize how much time we used to spend trying to align stakeholders on like, this is what we're going to build, this is the user stories, etc. But like being able to show them, hey, this is how it's going to look like. Look, you can just click there, you do this, you do that. They're like, yeah, cool, let's go.
Yeah.
They don't need to read the document like the
of course.
3 pages.
Yeah.
Just show them how it's going to look like.
So that, what was the readiness in terms of like stakeholders? Like, did you do this like sort of stealth, or how much did they know about what was being developed like on your own? Because I'm guessing, a wild guess, but I'm guessing that they were used to like bigger projects. It's gonna take like that many months or years to build a new interface and everything. Like how, what was the change in terms of stakeholder buy-in?
I think we the data model is something I've been thinking about little by little for the last 3 years, and just finding a way to do things better. And then when we actually decided to start this project, I just got on Lovable and see, okay, what can I do in 2 weeks? And then started to get really good results like really quickly. So I just carried on to like get to like a decent scope, and then just showed it. And then that kickstarted kind of the project and triggered, okay, let's do it for the rider app. And let's start to do that more and more, probably on smaller features, like as we do, okay, let's focus on this feature, let's do it for that. But you also have to be sensible, like there's no point of prototyping everything if, it doesn't make sense. You prototype things if you feel like there's a bit of like confusion, or like you feel like they're not really aligned. That's the moment when you should do this.
I wanted to touch this sort of like entrepreneur spirit, like if a PM wants to do entrepreneurship inside a company, like what's the first project you'd recommend? Like what would be if you were to do it again, what would be your first initiative or sort of problem you would want to tackle to show, like what AI can do?
I think it really depends on like what you're working on and what's the situation, etc. But I think vibe coding is probably the first thing you can start with. Next feature you're working on, instead of like waiting for a designer to produce mockups, etc. Just like get on Lovable, Visio, or any, and just try and do what you're thinking about, and just show it. I think that would be just like the kickstart to like get stakeholders excited and say, oh, they're probably going to ask like, can we do that all the time? But also, if you're working more on some strategy, etc., try and build this kind of system where you like create the context you think the AI needs to have a really good output and like on point based on what you're doing, and use it as a sparring partner. But when I say use it as a sparring partner, it's really get the AI to challenge you.
Yeah.
And because that's the biggest trap with AI is like AI will always tell you you're right and you're wonderful and you're the smartest person on earth. But what changes is when you say, hey, that's my thinking, just like challenge me, break it. And then it's going to make you think about certain areas and like you're going to cover like blind spots. And that's where your thinking starts to be really sharp.
Yeah.
Because then you can go to stakeholders and sell your idea, but then you might have like the first objections and you'll be, I thought about that. This is why I think we should still do it.
So that was my second point before when I said like people are moving to more managerial, like sort of like context engineering. And the second thing that you said that was super interesting is sort of question yourself. I feel that's an essential tool. And I saw a video yesterday. I think it was Dan Martell. I don't know if you know him. He uses AI a lot. He used to be a developer and now he's a multimillionaire, and he teaches a lot about AI, but just like how to use it on a daily basis. And he was like, one super simple term or phrase that really works for him is play devil's advocate. And when you do that with an AI, then as you said, like it's not as nice. And then it gives you like all the blind spots, because it's true that it's pretty overwhelming, and you can get overwhelmed by the outputs. It's like, oh my God, I'm a freaking genius. Like this has to work. But sometimes you also have to, see the blind spots and sort of think about what could go wrong. Like, what are the things that might not work? What is there anything that you say like question my play devil's advocate is the one thing that he says, it's simple. But is there any sort of like prompt that you say like question my chain of thought? Or
there's, I think, more than challenge yourself, usually what I ask it to do is like, what are the different approaches we could go about this?
Okay. Oh, interesting.
And can you give me the pros and cons of each and give me your recommendation?
Okay.
So it just opens make sure you've covered all different solutions. And so you have like a clear map of what they are. And then AI might give you a recommendation, and for some reason, this is not the right one because maybe it misses like a piece of context you haven't given it to, which helps you to then go back to your files and say, I'm going to go in there and then add this because it needs to know about this. I found that really interesting, especially with coding. When you have a problem, you say, okay, I need to do this feature. What are the different approaches we could go about? And then builds confidence that you're going to choose the right solution for different reasons. Like sometimes we're going to go crazy and tell you to like build like 10 different tables and like, to have stats and to or in case you lose connection and you do this and you do that, and you're like, okay, this is like the gold standard, but for one thing to do now, I just can go with like a much cheaper solution because I need to move fast and I'll just improve it later. But at least you know where you need to go later if you start to have this kind of problems.
One thing I've honestly struggled with, and I don't know if you've found the same thing. When I ask a big question or like a large like 360, like give me like a full model, blah blah blah, it gives me a good structure, but then I really have to ask it to focus on something, and it gives me a better result. I don't know. I'll take an example. If I were to like build a whole new project and say, hey, like, I don't know, build me a Notion structure about all of this, it's going to do a pretty good job of like finding the different, you know, things that would make sense. But then if you say, you know, detail every single section, it's gonna, like, the result, like the output is not going to be as good. Whereas if you focus and you isolate, you know, this specific thing, it gives you a better you're gonna have your dashboard, and then you're gonna have your database with this and that. You know, if you tell it to build that database, it's gonna be less in the one prompt, it's gonna be less accurate than if you focus on a specific item and you say, hey, that item, how does it relate to others and stuff? And I was wondering if you had any techniques or tips to how to work with that thing. You know, when you're building something from scratch, when do you zoom and when do you get a bigger overview?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think where, you know, there's this notion of like AI slop.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually the hardest thing to solve with AI. You know, when we were talking about these PRDs, I found myself with like really long documents with like all the like first about, you know, stakeholder mitigation risk and like your name at the bottom, this is this team and the date, and like just adds a lot of like noise. What I try to do is like, you need to like get your hands dirty to build like the system and like the structure, not let AI too much, because it can really go too far, especially like when I've been asking it like to build like certain pieces of the data model. It would add like, you know, random properties onto specific entities, and like, I never asked you to add that, and that's not true. And if you don't make sure you remove them or like fix it, it just compounds in the wrong direction. But I think the main thing is to like, once you have your structure and you, for example, you have a document, create a new tab for each task. Don't have like a massive conversation where your context window that just get like filled up, because that's when like the output really degrades. So I usually create a new tab, say, hey, I'm working on this section of this document. Can you make it shorter? Can we add this and that in there? Just really focused. I think that's when you get the best results. The downside of this is that you miss. Then the conversation does have the whole full context of your system. Yeah. So sometimes you would do something without checking that it's gonna be contradictory with like something else you've written somewhere else. So like, there's a fine balance with this, but especially when writing documents, like, you can get like a lot of things you don't need, and I found that the hardest thing to battle.
There's one thing I wanted to mention, Kigs. So you've also built a side project. Can you tell us what Kigs is in one sentence? Who's it for, and you know, what problem, let's say, did you personally feel that made you build it?
So Kigs is a platform that connects basically electro music, labels, artists, venues, promoters, and fans. I've been a promoter or organizer years ago. It's a strong passion of mine, and been thinking of building something for that community with one of my best friends for a while, and then we found this concept like a few years ago, and we say, okay, let's start to build something, you know, just for ourselves. And the interesting thing is we started just before the AI boom. Yeah. I remember we started building it on Flutterflow. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, of course.
So it was really slow, and then, you know, but we were starting to get like, you know, nice screens and stuff, so getting excited, and suddenly ChatGPT came out, and, you know, decided to, like, we probably need to switch to AI. And then it's been, to be honest, like the perfect playground for AI, because, you know, compared to your day job, you don't have like any constraints on like what tools you want to use, what processes, the small team. So like, you have way more freedom. You can try like so much. We've used AI in user research kind of things. So it's been amazing because we've learned so much. Like building those prototypes at Zeelo in 3 weeks. We've been able to do that because I've been able to do that because I've been playing with AI for more than 2 years now.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning. So you build kind of like a AI literacy. So you build like skills to know how to talk to it and what are how you can get to a result like much quicker, and what are the mistakes you should avoid.
I think and discuss it a lot with my wife and our kid. We have a 3-year-old, and it's the one thing that you have to question. At some point, it's going to be so autonomous. You're going to have to still be able to question yourself, have a clear vision. I feel, and understand, as you said, like how to talk to it and how to adapt, I guess, because it's moving so fast that, as you said, you were building it on Flutterflow, then ChatGPT came out, but then at some point Lovable came out, and you were like, oh shit, like I don't have to do the front end like at all, or I could speed things up so quickly. And now you get, when Anti-Gravity came out and it was just like free, at the end of last year, and people just realized that they could just, like work and have access to like their terminal and literally control their computer. And at some point, we're just going to be talking to our AIs, and they're going to do the work for us, and we're just going to be checking here and there. I'm already using a stack where I have Super Whisper and a person I know, Jonathan, he's gonna laugh. He does this, and I took some of his prompts and
stuff. I think I got the same freebie he gave on LinkedIn.
And being able to use Super Whisper and just talk to your computer and have it do everything. It's just crazy, like the time you save.
Yeah.
And it used to be so long, it used to take so long for us to build things and get the feedback. But as you said, like now you can learn so quickly because everyone has a job. You have stakeholders you have to deal with. It's not easy to make the time to do all these things. Most product people who can't do real product talking, enough to the users, it's because of time. And now you can just squeeze things, and you can have autonomous like machines or whatever you want to call it, agents or whatever, actually talk to your users, give you the feedback, give you, like the knowledge to make sure that you solve the right problems. I feel that's like crazy.
I don't know if you saw the all these new tools coming up where you can have like an AI interviewing users. So doing user research like completely automated and at scale. I think that's like groundbreaking. There's some risk about it because, for example, if you do like just to be done interviews, I don't think the AI could figure out like, oh, I need to go into more details about this and then skip about this part. This is where
still critical.
It's kind of a limit, and that's, I think, on humans would be able to have like the taste to do that. But the amount of things you can automate and the feedback you can gather, it's just insane. I think it really poses a question about what's the new mode, and a lot of people are thinking about that. You hear people saying it's design, it's the brand. I think it's true. I think this AI won't do the job for us on this side of things. But when you think about all these like SaaS products that took 10 years to build, and now they're in real danger because you can copy them in a year.
It's fast.
I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's gonna be economically it's gonna be interesting because it might like completely reshuffle the cards.
I still think that tech debt right now is it makes them safe. I mean, I don't feel that you could copy like SaaS products to the point where it would be cleaner to have an AI version. I think there would be risks, but we're getting there.
I think it's actually the opposite, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. I think these companies are suffering for that tech debt because they've built foundations 10 years ago and they evolved, and their cost to change now is really high.
True.
When you look at an HubSpot, like just the navigation, the settings page, it's just like, it's crazy. I wouldn't want to be a product manager on that team. And when you see what Linear is doing to Jira by building fresh products, doing the same thing, but just like way more focused, way cleaner. The same thing is happening to HubSpot with Atio.
Yeah.
If you heard of Atio.
Yeah, of course.
For me, they're the Linear of, the CRM, and they're gonna hurt them really bad. And I think that's actually like a big leverage, as you can rebuild this kind of like same scope of features, but like way cleaner with, ready for today's world. But I see what you mean, in like, AI also creates tech debt.
Yeah.
But I think these teams who are building these products are kind of AI native, and they know, where it can go wrong. So
true.
Again, it's all about managing your code base and making sure that you're not only going fast, but you're also taking time to invest in your development experience and DevOps, etc. To keep going fast without the downsides of it.
Do you have any guardrails or tips to make sure that that you do question yourself and you do, pay attention to, hey, maybe I'm letting the AI do too much, and I have to sort of like, take a step back at this point and sort of question what I've done up till now?
I think it's always good to look at your code base. Of course,
but that takes technical skills, like competence,
and I, we're talking about this experience of like building this rider app with Lovable. Lovable hides the code from you, and that's the biggest problem, because you're super confident you get something really quick, and that's where it might be controversial, but I don't think AI is completely ready for non-technical people.
Yeah, for
the reasons I mentioned before. But when I think about, more technical teams working on Claude Code and like a real code base, pull request reviews are essential. We absolutely have to check what AI has done, and to be strict, because sometimes you would have done something, it's working, but it might have changed like a lot of different things that haven't broken your code right now, but it might break in the second feature you're going to build.
Yeah.
Just because you've let those like 3 lines to change.
Yeah, of course.
The problem is going to rise just later. And you probably wouldn't have changed these lines if you did it yourself.
Yeah.
But being really strict with your pull requests, I think, is like critical. I don't know if we ever get to a point where we don't need to review the codes and we can just like trust AI 100%, or when that's going to happen. But I think we're still really far from that.
I really like that as we discussed, you're now able to have your job, and at the same time you could go on a personal project because of how augmented, like AI allows you to be. Can you explain for Kigs? Can you explain like the core mechanism of like how do you connect like the front end to like backend repos, and what's like the specialized like sub agents that you're actually responsible for?
I think it's basically the same setup. This concept of product oracle.
Yeah.
So we ended up creating a third repo, which is our product sparring partner. So what's funny with AI is that it changes everything, but at the same time everything stays the same. So there's still a planning phase where you're like, okay, I need to build this feature. Is it aligned with our strategy? Like, how would you think about it? And then you kind of iterate until you're happy with something. The big difference is that while you do that, we have like the GitHub MCP, which is able to connect to our front-end repo and our back-end repo. So it gives you feedback on how your code base is now. So it can tell you, we're ready to build this right now. You need to make these changes before, and helps you shape the technical specs for it, but align with your code base, knowing what your code base is right now. And so this concept of sub-agents is basically breaking down what would you need in an ideal world in that team. So on the front end team, you would need like a person specialized in analytics, person specialized in design. You know, you send it like a Figma link, and it would tell you, oh, this component is really similar to this one. Is it like an upgrade to it, or do you want me to create a separate component? You would have like, I don't know, an agent specialized in bottom sheets. It knows how to create bottom sheets in a mobile app, for example. Backend is the same. You have like an architect, maybe a super-based specialized agent, etc. And so you can embed your context in all of these, you know, to make sure your output is going to be perfect. So your planning phase can really be on point, and then that's when you review it. And then once you're ready, and you ask your PM sub-agent in your product Oracle repo, that PM sub-agent is basically spawning sub-agents in the front-end repo and the back-end repo to actually execute on the plan.
Yeah.
And because they have like really specific tasks that are small and special into something, then you know your output is going to be really, really good. The main idea of all of that is to get to a point where you have one prompt, the perfect output. It's utopic, but that's why we're working towards. You know?
That's honestly, that's even where, you know, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Anthropic are going. You know, like that's the idea. But your concept is maybe speeding things up before they get to that point and they connect everything, because I feel that's the ultimate goal. Like we did this before with automation. I mean, I use N8N like on a daily basis, and being able to have, you know, tools talking to one another, that was already great. Yeah. And now being able to like feel, you know, like feed everything and sort of build constantly using different technologies, because I don't feel there's going to be, that's my personal opinion, but I don't feel there's going to be like one AI that you talk to and it does everything for you and that's it. I still feel that there's going to be specialized tools. The thing is going to be how they're connected and how they're able to interact between each other.
Yeah. I think it's like always this question of like bundling and unbundling, you know? You can go with like one tool that does like everything, but like not so well. And you can choose to go with highly specialized tools, but like how that are interconnected with each other. And I think until now, we would rather go with one tool because we're like, okay, we don't want to like have to manage like APIs and like connect them because like it can break and like they need to be able to talk to each other. AI has completely changed the narrative because, you know, with MCP servers now, like they can talk to each other. You can actually leverage what tools are really good at into your own stack. And I think basically the stack you're using is actually like a big denominator of like how productive you are and the output of your company, basically.
Yeah, true. I'd like to get your opinion on what are your main takeaways, you know, that PMs can apply, let's say, next week. Like if you were to give us like a 7-day plan of what a PM should do next week to start using AI to drive change, like what would be your first steps?
Try like open those tools and just like try and just find if it's at work, find your next feature you need to work on, try and prototype, install Claude Code or on Claude Cowork now. Use it to iterate on your PRDs, try and connect the MCP tools of the stack you're using. You know, if you're using Amplitude, do that. If you're using, I don't know, Monday, HubSpot, just try and see how far you can get and how precise you can go about your work. If it's not at work, you know, because you have like limitations of the tools you can use, like just find a side project ideas. It can be a simple app. It doesn't need to be complicated, and just like start building. I think it's a unique time in history, and I feel like so grateful to be alive and to have the age I am right now. Yeah, we're so lucky. Yeah, it's the best time to start building something. And it's also a time where you have to invest. You have to invest outside of work, to learn, to try things out, because in 6 months, 1 year time, the difference it's going to make in your career is incredible. There's a train that passes by, either you jump on it or you're going to left behind. And I think it's gonna create a fracture between the people who are able to get their hands dirty, willing to learn, are curious, and the ones who are waiting for someone to teach them to do something. So yeah, just get on it, start building, start doing stuff. Whether it's prototyping, whether it's working on some strategy with Claude Code.
And is there a don't do this mistake that you've learned the hard way?
I think that's the thing. There's nothing wrong you can do.
Yeah.
You know, what can happen? It can't go wrong. If you start building, you start training those tools, and not only in coding, you know, you can use like Gamma, for example, for slides.
Yeah, for slides.
You can now like build slides with Lovable. You know, it can be as simple as that. If you're not working in product and you're working in like completely different departments, nothing wrong can happen. Well, you won't break anything.
I'm not necessarily talking about breaking. Like, one thing that I know I've done wrong is what I told you, like at the beginning of the podcast, questioning your AI, like trying to think there's a better tool or stuff like that, and switching between tools. Honestly, there's going to be that 1 month to 2 month period where the model is not going to be updated, and then the competitor is going to have a better model. But like, I found that sticking to the same, AI in the end game, actually pays off. Yeah. But you keep questioning, and then you see, of course, you follow people on LinkedIn, you see Bob likes Anthropic more than ChatGPT, but then Michael likes ChatGPT better, and he did something cool today, but next week Bob's gonna do something better. So like, not switching, honestly, and
no, I agree. I think that's
choosing your tool. There's always going to be a shinier hammer.
Yeah, and the FOMO is big, I think, at the moment. Especially if you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, you're like, oh gosh, I'm so behind. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, sticking to one tool, but also sticking to what you can leverage it for right now. Yeah, find a use case in your daily work, and just try to get really good at this, and not try to do like things in like areas that is not really in your work and you're not going to be apply tomorrow. Find something you can apply tomorrow, and just like stick with one tool, and just get to see what you can get to with that new workflow and stuff. What
would be, let's say, a single metric or signal that you use to decide that the prototype deserves real investment?
I mean, if you start learning something about it, just keep going and see, until the point where, users are delighted and you feel like, this product is viable and is feasible, and you can go ahead with it. I mean, it all depends about the context in which you're building this prototype, right? Sometimes you're building a prototype to just validate your assumptions, and you just want to de-risk the project to go ahead. Sometimes you're just trying something like completely crazy, and you're like, okay, is this gonna work? And you're like, oh, actually, yeah, it's being used. I'm seeing like real usage. I should like turn it into like a real product with like a proper, production ready stack and like real authentication, these kind of things. So it depends on context, but main thing is learning.
Maybe to wrap things up, so you're launching Kigs as well. Where can people follow Kigs, and what kind of feedback are you looking for? Because you've talked about feedback, so obviously for this new, for this new side project that you have, you're looking for feedback. So
well, at the moment we're only recruiting like beta testers, just to see like if the product sticks. So we really focus on retention. You can follow Kigs on Instagram. And then in terms of feedback, we're looking for people who are really passionate about underground electronic music. It's kind of a really niche product. I'm not gonna lie, So join the beta test and try it out, and then you can message us on Instagram or even through the app. So
perfect. Maybe one final question, like what's your current favorite AI tool or AI powered tool?
I think it would be Claude Code. I think Claude Code really changed my life.
This is honestly, you should get paid for that because you sell it to me. You sold it to me, and I've used it twice as much since we first talked.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I'm now I've fully transitioned because I was testing a bunch of things, but I've literally fully transitioned to Claude Code ever since we've talked.
Yeah, I have two friends who are working in completely different industries where I've shown them recently, and they've completely adopted it, and they just can't live without it anymore. It's funny you say you should get paid for this because I don't know if you know Teresa Torres.
Yeah, of course.
She's a massive fan of Claude Code, and she wrote a ton of articles recently about it, and she's not paid for it. But there's people on Reddit who are starting to say she's being paid for it, she's not telling it, no. And so she had to come out recently on LinkedIn saying, guys, I'm not being paid for Claude Code. It's crazy that people think about this. We're still free to talk about a product we really love.
Yeah.
It's just insane the amount of word of mouth this product has. It's
true.
It's, in terms of virality, it's unseen.
But I feel you can do so much, man. Thank you so much for all these insights. It's crazy. Congrats on everything you've done and on being an AI champion, because I think we need people like you. And thank you for giving us all these insights.
Thanks to you for the invite. It's been a fun time.
What I liked about this episode is that it goes beyond the usual AI hype. Benjamin shares what it actually looks like when a product leader uses AI to move faster, test faster, and even help drive a real replatforming effort. He also makes something very clear. AI doesn't remove complexity. If anything, it forces you to be even sharper on context, decisions, and foundations. The idea of PMs becoming context managers really stayed with me. And honestly, it feels like one of the most important shifts to pay attention to right now. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. I'm Cedric, this is The French Product. I'll see you in the next episode.